I don't know if you found this, but when I first started, I was a bit confused about how you get paid, because I was like, do I pay models or do they pay me, or like I'm kind of stuck between two, but I'm leaning more towards like portraits. Like I think that's my main thing. I don't necessarily think it's the thing I'm best at, but it's the thing that I enjoy doing most. In my head, I'm not like I have to shoot it like this because way. Then it will look like my work. Yeah. I just shoot it because that's how I see it. I can't shoot it in any other way. So it's hard for me to identify, like, I shot it at college. It all came out black and white. I was like, what? And I just didn't really get it. I was just like, no, it's not for me. Like, the photos don't look that different to digital. Yeah. Like, what's the point in kind of I didn't get it at all. And
Hi guys, welcome to the Be Cool Studios podcast. My name is Compton, and as you can see, I've got a special guest with me today. No, I've not ditched him out. He is still around. Don't worry guys, he's still around. But we've got a very, very special guest, a actual friend of the studio and a phenomenal and amazing photographer, Sophia Carey. Sophia, welcome to the Be Cool Studios podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh no, thank you for having me. It's such a nice space as well. I'm very jealous.
You're welcome to use the space whenever you wish. So let's jump straight in. Tell the people a little bit more about yourself. Who is Sophia Carey, and what do you do?
Yeah, so my name's Sophia Carey. I am a photographer, portrait, music photographer, based in Manchester at the moment. I'm originally from London. But, you know, I've travelled all around the place. So
London girl, living in Manchester. Are you technically Mancunian now, or are you still?
I don't know. If maybe the Manx will call me an honorary, but I'm not sure if I'm there yet. But
yeah. So in terms of photography, where did it all start for you, and when did it all start for you?
It's really difficult to pinpoint like an exact date. Like, I'm sure you find this as well, because it's something that happens so like organically. Yeah. But I first like properly kind of started getting into photography when I was at college. Mm-hmm. I studied graphic design, and I didn't want to be like paying for stock imagery. So I got like a little, it was a Canon EOS 650D. Yeah. And I'd just go around and take photos of like doors and like textures to like use in my design. Yeah. And then like growing up where I grew up, there was a lot of like music events and stuff like that. So I would take my camera with my friends to music events, document like the live music, people behind the scenes, because they were small venues. They weren't like big venues, so you could like be backstage with the artists or whatever. And yeah, it just kind of grew from there, like really accidentally. Really.
Were there anything else that you were interested in before photography, or?
Well, like graphic design was my thing. So I did that at college, and then I moved to Manchester and I studied it at uni in Salford.
So you've qualified as a graphic designer as well. So that's very helpful in terms of
in case it all goes wrong.
No, it never go wrong. With a woman of your talent, I can't see it ever going wrong. So what was the first job that you had?
The first job that I had. The
first official paid job.
The first time I got paid for a job, I didn't even know I was getting paid. I got asked to shoot some stuff for this, like, it was like a clothing brand that, it wasn't really a clothing brand. It was a bit like a Depop store or something, but it wasn't really when Depop stores were like a thing. So they were reselling like vintage clothing. And they asked me to come down and take some photos, and like I was like 17, my mum wouldn't let me go to things on my own, so I brought my friends. That's
important.
Yeah, and I went, shot some photos. Like, it was really cold. It's all right. Yeah, shot some photos. It was really cold, and they just paid me like coins at the end. Like, I didn't even know I was getting paid. Like, she just gave me some money at the end, like whatever she had in her pocket.
How did that made you feel?
I was like, oh, you can get paid for this, because I don't know if you found this, but when I first started, I was a bit confused about how you get paid, because I was like, do I pay models, or do they pay me, or like how does it kind of work?
There was that time, but at some point you realised that technically you should be the one
exactly
getting paid, because you're the one that do most of the work.
Yeah, but that for me was a big like, do I ask people for money? Like, what do I charge? Like, that sort of thing. So, but yeah, that was the first thing. And
so going straight into what you just mentioned and what do you charge? Like, that is obviously a big thing right now within the industry. But how did you figure out what to charge after that?
Well, I think I kind of said this to you earlier on before we started, but it's kind of an instance of just throwing numbers at the wall, seeing what sticks, and then slowly kind of like
incrementally increasing that. As I look at it this way, and I don't know if you might do the same. As you improve as a photographer, as you improve as a creative, your prices should start reflecting that.
Yeah. So I've kind of used like different tactics throughout my career as such. One bit of advice I read quite early on was kind of just increase your rates to the point where people stop hiring you. Yeah. So I tried that for a bit. And then I also read like this whole thing about, you know, don't worry about losing work. If you double your rates and you book half the amount of work, it's okay because you're getting paid the same.
Yeah, you're getting paid the same money. Work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. So I tried to kind of incorporate that. But yeah, it's just been a lot of like, you know, I've even had like clients in the past kind of say, you need to put your prices up, like just kind of. That's
great when when clients actually come and say that, because obviously within the industry you'll have I think probably about 80% will probably be, no, you're too expensive.
Yeah.
And it'll only be that genuine 20% who value your work and your creativity and your, you know, the body of work that you put out, that will pay you what you worth.
Yeah.
So it's a very like sore subject in a way, because people take us for granted. I personally feel like even today I heard something a photographer said on another podcast, and it just irritated me a little bit. But I'm not gonna go into that. But in terms of like work, you've got a body of work that span product, lifestyle, music, weddings, events. So if you had to pick, which would you say is your favorite thing to do, and why? Which do you enjoy the most?
I'm kind of stuck between two, but I'm leaning more towards like portraits. Like I think that's my main thing. I don't necessarily think it's the thing I'm best at, but it's the thing that I enjoy doing most. So yeah, like I guess if I couldn't do anything other than one genre, it would be portraits. But yeah, music photography comes a close second for me.
Because what I like about your, and I said we'll put some of Sophia's work on the screen as well so you guys can see, is like, and myself and Damar talk about this, right? There's two people or a few people that we can jump on any social media platform and be scrolling and we'll know exactly whose photos they are. And you are one of those persons. And obviously, as we spoke about, a mutual friend of ours it's like, I can always tell a Sophia portrait or a Sophia music shot or an event shot, because there's a certain vibe and a certain element to it that, you know, that was really cool. Like, it feels like the atmosphere, you capture not just the actual image, but the atmosphere, everything about it, like the editing style, we love it, absolutely love it. So big compliments for you for that. And I know that is something that I've gone to that stage now where other people mention it to me, and I know that takes time, but I recognize it through other people telling me. Have you had that same experience? As someone that come and said to you, like, I recognize your work without even like looking at the tags?
Yeah, I feel like people say it a lot, but I don't know if you'll find this with your own work, that I don't really know what my style is. Like, I don't know what it is that defines my style, because the best way I can think about it is that I don't really think about what I shoot. That's just how I see things. So it's not like I have like in my head, I'm not like, I have to shoot it like this because then it will look like my work.
Yeah.
I just shoot it because that's how I see it. I can't shoot it in any other way. So it's hard for me to identify like, that's what people see in my work. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you think it then come to life as you get into the editing process then?
Yeah, maybe. But then I think as well, like, as I've started shooting film, obviously I don't really edit my film, like, so that's become a weird thing as well, because I don't know, maybe my digital editing style kind of is a little bit more reminiscent of film, and that's why it kind of
crosses over
easily.
Do
you know what I mean?
And you see, I'm talking about film, obviously you've gone straight into one of the topics we're talking about, like shooting film. Like, what was that experience like the first time, and what got you into shooting film?
My kind of journey with film photography has been so, like, when I was at college, I got given like a little 35mm camera.
Film camera, yeah.
And I still have it now. You can literally buy it for like £10. because mine broke and then I bought another one for £10.
Nice.
I love it. I shot the first roll. I didn't even know it was black and white. I didn't know that like you had black and white film.
Versus, you thought it was just all one.
Exactly. So I shot it at college. It all came out black and white. I was like, what? And I just didn't really get it. I was just like, no, it's not for me. Like, the photos don't look that different to digital. Yeah. Like, what's the point in kind of I didn't get it at all. And I didn't get rid of the camera. I just
kept it.
Yeah, I just didn't think anything of it. And then maybe late 2019, loads of people had started shooting medium format, and that was like a really big thing. Like, I'd seen all of this work and I was like, I love the look of that.
The look of the work
like, it
itself.
Looks amazing. And I'd thought about it for like quite a long time, like, should I do it? But I don't know where to start, like all of that. And then I ended up investing in a Mamiya RB67, which if anyone shoots film, you know that is like a stupid camera to start with. It's
huge
the
as well, isn't
camera.
it?
Yeah, it's massive.
Huge.
And it's like when you know nothing about film photography, it was horrendous. My first couple of rolls were terrible. I was like, what have I done?
It's very expensive, isn't it? It's not a cheap thing. It's not a cheap thing, so that is very expensive. So in terms of like actual film prices and stuff, obviously that is an expensive thing. So if you do get it wrong,
it
really hurt, and it doesn't just hurt you here, it's you in the pocket as well, isn't it?
Definitely.
But yeah, going back a little bit to digital, what was your first camera, like your official like paid job camera that you would go out and do job? Because people on here do love, and we as photographers know, everyone as other photographers like to know what people are shooting with. And I don't think it makes much of a difference, because I find it's not about the camera they use, it's about the person behind it and how they see the image and capture it, like you spoke about before. It's about what you see. You want to capture that on camera, on film or whatever. So what was your first camera? Yeah,
so my first camera was the Canon EOS 650D. That was the first camera I had. That was the first camera I used for paid work.
Was it crop frame? Because I was a Nikon guy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
I'm a Nikon guy. And now we do shoot on something else at the moment. So we do shoot on the same thing now. But how long did you have that for? And is that the camera that you used to then own your skills towards where you can afford to get the higher end stuff?
Yeah, so the only reason I upgraded from that camera was because I broke it.
Okay.
And that is, I'll tell you that story in a minute. But I probably wouldn't have upgraded if I hadn't have broken it. I was happy with using it. Now, if I try and use it, I'm like, how did I used to do this? Because when you get used to like better equipment,
autofocus and all of that.
It's hard to go back. But I loved it. I didn't feel like restricted by it. So I went on holiday with my friends and it was raining and I had my camera. I thought I'll put it in my bag so that it doesn't get wet.
Right.
And then we walk in and I'm like, why is the back of my legs wet? Like, it's only raining on the back of my legs. Like, it's not raining anywhere else. And then I look in my bag and my water bottle has leaked.
Oh no.
It's like flooded out my camera. And this was like the last day of the holiday, I think. And the next day I was coming back to Manchester. We were flying back and I had a big campaign. It was like the biggest campaign that I'd ever shot at that point in my career.
Yeah.
And I had no camera. So we landed at midnight and at 8 a.m. I went to Jessop's and I just bought a Canon 60.
Why have you set an alarm? Yeah. I'll carry on, sorry.
No, you're good. So we landed at midnight and then 8 a.m. went to Jessop's as soon as it opened, bought a Canon 16 Mark II. It was like every penny I owned I spent because I was at uni still as well. And I was skint for like
So in terms of, I'm also guessing at this point you didn't have things like insurance and all of that to replace any of that stuff. So this is something we spoke about in a previous podcast to let other photographers know some of the mistakes that we've made. What is one of the mistakes you would say that you've made that you, not necessarily mistakes or lessons you had to learn the hard way? I'm guessing that sound like one of those lessons that you had to learn.
I think there's a lot. Like, I actually did a talk at the photography show, and the whole talk was about making mistakes. So yeah, there's a lot of mistakes. I feel like I'm someone that makes a lot of mistakes.
But you learn from your mistakes 100%. More than you do from the things that you do correctly.
Yeah, it's trial and error, isn't it?
Is there one that stand out to you that you would say that you go back and say now you would look at it and think?
You know, it's one of those things, because I don't really regret many mistakes because I've learned from them. One of the most stupid and expensive mistakes I made was on the Mamiya RZ67. There's this little slider on your lens, which it's like it has a T on it. And what that does is, if you open the slider up, it opens the shutter, and the shutter basically won't close unless you tell it to. Okay. So basically it overrides your shutter speed that you've set.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it was clicked on, and I shot 5 rolls of film with it on, and all of the photos were like long exposures, but I didn't know that. So yeah, that was very expensive.
Very, very expensive.
Yeah, very. Yeah, that one was hard.
So we spoke a bit earlier about what some of the different genres of photography you do. Obviously, I know you do a little bit of wedding, which myself do. How do you find like weddings compared to like maybe an actual music event? Like, what's your approach when it comes to like going into a wedding shoot compared to going into
the way I think of weddings is like, you have to use all of your skills when it comes to weddings. Like, it's documentary, it's low light, it's portraits, you know, it's all of that stuff.
Capturing so-called moments as
exactly
well.
Yeah, so it's definitely probably, I think, the hardest form of photography because of that
pressure as well as there.
Exactly, yeah, you don't want to mess it up. I love doing weddings. Like, I love, especially at the end, like when you look through the photos and you see that day back again. I love that, but the pressure for me is a lot.
I felt exactly the same with saying I just feel like there's so much pressure on you as a photographer. But I also find when I first started doing weddings, I don't know about yourself, like, also pricing was a big issue based on the experience that I had. And then when I finally found a price that I felt was good, I was still having to haggle with clients. Yeah. Have you found this as well? Like, clients will come to you, they'll come because they've seen your work somewhere or someone has recommended you to them. And they will come and they'll say, "Hi, Sophia, we're getting married XY date and we'd like you to do the photos. What are your prices?" And then you send your prices over along with some examples of your work as well. And it's like, okay, do you think you can do it for about, have you had that, and did you react to?
Yeah, I think I've had that like quite a lot. I think most wedding photographers will have that. The way I kind of deal with pricing with weddings is, I'm at a point now where weddings is not the main part of my practice, so I don't rely on it, which is a nice position to be in, because then I don't need to drop my prices if I don't want to.
Yeah.
But of course, in the past, like, I've designed maybe a different package for someone and said, okay, well, I can't go that low, but I could offer you this instead. Yeah. I think that's always a good way of doing it, to kind of,
give
meet
them
in the
alternative,
middle.
Alternative, but you're not losing out as a photographer. You're still not losing out in a way. Like, I think that's the one thing, is like, you have to learn. Pricing will always be an issue, regardless of what you do and what stage in your photography career you are. But once you've learned what you worth, and then you work out, how you can get that across to a client without sounding like, quote unquote, like you're being like you want to rob them or something, because I think people almost feels like we're trying to rob them. I always break it down for them and show them the value in what we produce, because some people come to you and they ask you, like, Sophia, can you take some portraits for my brand particular, like some brand shots, but you will charge them XY amount, but they'll make 20 times that amount when you produce the images and you give it to them using the same images. But yet at the beginning they wouldn't want to actually pay you what you were. Yeah. And I've had that many times this year. And I've had it on one occasion where I had to basically show the client what I was trying to explain to them during the shoot. And then they were like, okay.
Yeah.
and it's almost like you have to let them know that, look, there is a value here, and I'm telling you,
it's an investment.
Yeah, it's an investment, and the value is the work that I'm going to produce for you. You're going to get that, and you're going to get more.
Yeah,
your investment is going to be an absolute killing in return.
Yeah,
but they just need to know that. I don't know how. Like, sometimes it's hard to get across to them in terms of like letting them know. But yeah, you've also ventured into something that a lot of people would love to get into, a YouTube as well. See, the thing is that this is what I love about Sophia, right? She's not just a photographer. She's a YouTuber, technically, and an educator. There's something else that you do as well, but we'll go into that a little bit later. But tell us a little bit more about the YouTube stuff, because I've got a little story I want to talk about later. But yeah, how did you get into that, and how are you finding it?
YouTube for me, again, like most things I do, it's kind of an accident. So the reason I started YouTube was I used to get like loads of questions and stuff on Instagram, and I just thought, I'll just do a Q&A. I'll just sit down and I'll film a Q&A. It's still my channel. It's terrible. Like, you can watch it if you want, but you won't find any value in it.
We'll link in the description. There's always value. There's always nuggets.
No, actually, I might private it before this goes out. But yeah, so I did that, and then it's so sporadic. Like, if you go back to the beginning of my YouTube, I'd put out a video, then I'd maybe wait like 3 months and then put out another one, and it was just like, I wasn't taking it seriously at all.
But you were focused on your photography anyway,
and I was at uni as well, so it was like, it's just a thing. I just thought, how hard is this? Like, is it hard? Turns out it is.
It's a lot of work.
And I didn't really start taking it seriously until the pandemic, when I couldn't work. So
you had more time in your hands.
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously you've had so much time to, so much experience as well within different sort of industry, genre of photography. So there's a wealth of knowledge there that you could then share to other people as well. Which obviously I started watching your videos, and I think at one point I did reach out to Sophia, because I was trying to be a YouTuber too. I am trying to be a YouTuber too. And I was just like, how do you get comfortable in front of the camera? And your answer was just as plain and simple: do it more.
Yeah.
Do more of it.
You got to. It's such a bizarre feeling at first as well. Like, looking at a camera and there not being anyone else in the room is so, like, I remember my first couple of videos I had, because I was still shooting on the Canon 650D.
Yeah.
So it had like the little flip out articulating screen, and I would watch myself in that
rather than watch the lens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And people would comment like, what, like, why are you doing that? Like, it's uncomfortable to watch. And I'm like, oh, sorry. And like, even now I'm very like handsy when I talk.
Yeah.
But it's like things like that. Like, people sometimes they're a bit mean about it.
The internet will forever stay undefeated when it comes to certain things. Sometimes you just have to ignore it, not take it to heart.
Yeah, but it's just learning. It's taking people's advice. It's finding your way of doing it. Like, so for example, we were talking earlier about doing multiple takes. If you look at all like the bloopers of my YouTube videos, I was gonna say music videos, YouTube videos, is terrible. But like, I have this thing where like I have to make a noise. So if I mess it up, I'll go like, and I like shake it out.
Yeah.
And then I just start again, and it's like, and it helps me as well when I'm editing, because I can see like the little
where you actually made that noise.
Exactly. It's like refreshing your brain and like just getting.
But like, you've obviously developed a really great presence now, because I've been watching the progression, and like I said, like, your videos, they're so informative now as well. And there's still that story element, like I talked about before. Like, especially when I think you recently uploaded something. You went to Belgium, I think, right?
Yeah.
And the way you tell it, it's almost like, I look at it like the same way. There's another photographer, you probably heard of him, Volanders, I think he's called.
He's
I think he does a lot of film, right?
Yeah.
There's like that story type element to it, and I find that very, very fun to watch. Like, sit down there, and I can get lost in it, because I'm almost following you back onto that journey that you've just been on, in a way. And that's why I gravitated to certain videos, because I find that if it does not draw me in that way, it loses my attention after about 2 minutes. Like, I'm gone.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Well, when people can try and tell that story of the journey, because it's almost, I think you said it's a photographer's guide to Belgium.
Yeah.
Like, I've never personally been to Belgium, but some of the things that you've put in there, I'm like, oh, that looks cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Certain things I didn't even know that was associated with Belgium. I think there was like something with a character.
The Tintin, yeah. I didn't
thing.
know that until I went, yeah.
Exactly. So it's like stuff like that. So it's so informative. So it's really good to see the progression. Like, and we said we wish you nothing but the best. But I think you also do a little bit of teaching as well, I think.
Yeah,
Skillshare. Tell us how did that come about, and where can we find that?
So I run like online courses on Skillshare. Something I started back when I was at uni. It's one of those things that they sell it to teachers as, you can teach anything. If you know something, you can teach it. Do you know what I mean? So my first classes on there are terrible, but I have been lucky enough to work with them with Skillshare over the last few years to kind of develop my teaching style and my content to create things that hopefully people
we will
find
link
useful.
Make sure we put a link to that in the description as well, so you guys can go check out some of Sophia's class and get yourself on one of them. You might learn something. And if you don't do Skillshare, you can also check out our YouTube video. She'll link everything there in the description as well. So let's talk cameras.
Okay.
You talk about shooting Canon before,
Mm-hmm.
but if a little birdie, or from my naked eyes, seen that you may have switched to something else.
Yeah.
What have you switched to, and why? If you don't mind elaborating on that for us.
Yeah, no, I switched to Sony. When was it? I think it was like end of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And it was mainly because, like, kind of for two reasons. One, I wanted to get a camera that was better in low light, especially as I was getting back into live music and stuff like that. But secondly, I wanted a kind of a better hybrid camera so that I could be doing the YouTube and I could be filming video on something and not having to take two cameras with me everywhere. Do you know what I mean? So that was probably the biggest bit, because like previously I would be taking like my Canon 6D Mark II to shoot stills.
Yeah.
Then I had a Lumix S1 that I'd take, which is a heavy camera, to film the video. And then if I was shooting film, I'd have that as well. Like, it was just taking too many cameras.
And obviously, a one-woman band, it's hard to actually do everything at once and then have to remember everything.
Exactly. So
what was the actual process switching over? How easy did you find it switching over to Sony? Because let's not kid ourselves. I've switched over to Sony as well from Nikon, and it was a bit of a learning curve getting used with menus and all of that stuff. Yeah. So how did you find it?
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned Iz earlier on. He switched to Sony before me, a couple months before me, and I just asked him so many questions. Like, he actually sent me some of his RAWs beforehand, so I could see how the colours were different and
if you can edit it the same way.
Exactly. So that gave me a lot of confidence that it was the right decision. And then obviously getting used to the menus, getting used to the buttons being in the different places, like. It's one of those things, but when you're shooting as often as we shoot, you get used to it quite quickly, because you're doing it every day. So
it's crazy how is keep popping up in this conversation, our conversation, right? But it's funny you say that you spoke to him, because I spoke to him too, because he's the one that recommended what I use now, and he actually sent me the link to buy it.
Yeah, same. Did he send you to E-Infinity as well?
Yeah. So he sent us the link to buy it.
I bet he's getting commission, isn't he? He's racking that.
We need our cut now. But I switched as well to Sony, and like I said, you found it a little bit difficult to begin with, but a lot of YouTube videos, a lot asking people who shot Sony before, a lot of questions, just to get used to the system. And like you said, you go out and you just shoot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I did a lot of test shoots as well, just to get used to the camera.
Yeah, I did, yeah.
And once I did that, I then gradually just became huge fans of it, because I couldn't then live without it, with all the features that it offered.
100%.
And like you said, it was so fantastic in low light, etc. So, and being people who shoot events and stuff, it's important that you get a camera that's reliable, isn't it?
Definitely.
Have you had a horror story when you're on an event and your camera stop or or you forgot a memory card or something? Have you had something like that happen?
Yeah, I've had like nothing too drastic, but I've had I went to a fashion shoot once and left all my SD cards and ended up having to borrow it from the studio manager, which that was, she saved me there. Yeah. And then I've had SD cards like malfunction at weddings. Like that's why it's important to have like a Sony that has 2 slots. My Canon didn't have that, so other things, batteries, like when batteries overheat or like they just randomly don't work or something like that. Things like that, but nothing too touch wood.
Touch wood. We're touching wood here. Every wood that's possible, we're touching it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had similar incidents. I've shot for a celebrity client. We'll go into that because you've shot a couple of celebrity clients yourself. You've got a great portfolio. And I show up to a shoot and my camera just shutter wouldn't open. I remember just about to hit the panic station button. But again, being photographers who shoot a lot of events and like weddings, like I said, we always have to have a backup as well. Mm-hmm. So luckily it saved me having a backup. Mm-hmm. It saved me. I remembered I had a backup in the car. I had 1 battery. 1 battery left and I had 4 hours worth of shooting.
Yeah.
I was switching the camera off every time.
Yeah,
I wasn't doing anything just to save me. But the client still to this day does not know.
That's the important thing. Yeah.
It's almost, so my thing was not to panic the client. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of dealt with it on my own on the side and I just crack on.
Yeah.
So going back to like celebrity clients, your portfolio is amazing. Like we'll link some of Sophia's images. You've worked with the likes of Leanne from Little Mix. You've done some of the girls from the England team as well, right?
Yeah.
You've worked with some. Which one of those jobs did you enjoy the most? Not putting you on the spot, but which one was the most fun to shoot? Because I know the stuff with the Lionesses was quite big, especially with it being the Euros and everything that was happening there.
I think of those 3 shoots in particular, they were all very different. So the one with Leanne, that was actually, I was doing like behind the scenes for her.
Yeah.
So she was in a new movie, like it was her first movie that she was in. So it was like behind the scenes at the premiere, that sort of thing. And the portraits that I took we literally had like a 2-minute time to kind of get those portraits. So it was a bit of a different job than like a normal portrait shoot. And then when it came to the 2 Lionesses, so it was Mary, who is the goalie, and Georgia, who is one of their strikers. They were 2 different shoots and they were very different as well. Yeah. Because I originally got booked for the Georgia Stanway shoot. And that was like a full editorial. We had a stylist, we had makeup artists. Yeah. It was...
Here's what I found.
Your reaction there was priceless.
Whoa.
That's why I took mine off.
That's what you get for being as like waving your hands as I am. But yeah, the Georgia Stanway shoot was a full shoot. Like we had like the creative director was on board. There was like, the Nike representatives, they were all there. And that was a much bigger shoot. And it was actually on that shoot that they asked me if I was free the next day.
That's amazing.
To shoot
so
Mary.
that shows that they also not just like you as a photographer, they like what you brought and the vibe and the energy. Hopefully. Because that's important, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that goes as well. That's fantastic to hear.
Yeah. And then Mary's shoot, that was so different because I actually went to her house and it was just me, Mary, and the Adidas representative.
So it feels
that was
a little bit more intimate.
Yeah.
And you could take like a little bit of stress off, like I would presume.
Yeah.
A little bit more calmer.
Yeah, it was just very different to the day before, really. Like Georgia's one was it was much more planned. We kind of had an idea in our head. Whereas with Mary, we just went for a walk and we were like, yeah, what can we kind of get out of this walk?
In terms of like, you talk about the scale of that shoot, having stylists, makeup artists, etc., creative directors. How do you then take that and incorporate it into your like portrait sessions, or do you have like a team that you work with when it comes to like your portrait stuff, or do you just still do it just you model?
I think most of my work is still just me and the model or the client. I work well like that. I'm quite relaxed. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the things I try to do, especially because I work with like a lot of musicians and stuff like that, is just, they might not necessarily be comfortable in front of the camera. So I just want to create a really
relaxed
environment. But I love working with stylists and doing the whole editorial thing. I love doing that. It's just not something I do as much, I guess.
Like your a typical shoot for yourself. How do you plan it out? Do you create mood boards? Do you create shot lists, etc. before or during the shoot? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I usually mood board. And shortlist I don't do as much unless it's like an event. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I need to get. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, for portraits and stuff, I usually just do a mood board. And then, you know, if there's anything that the client wants to incorporate as well.
Specific,
and then most of it is kind of like I base locations based on styling and styling based on the mood board. So it's like, you know, it's kind of everything informs each other. But yeah, it's just quite relaxed. I work in a quite relaxed way.
And obviously you shoot a lot. You shoot a mixture of outdoors and indoors.
Yeah.
Also studio and location. A big shout out for actually doing this for us because Sophia shot film. Sophia helped us out recently. Thank you very much. Which one, in terms of like outdoors and indoors, do you have like a preferred setting you prefer to shoot? Do you prefer to shoot more studio stuff, or do you enjoy the location stuff more?
I think I generally prefer shooting in like on location because I'm more comfortable with it. So not necessarily because I actually prefer it, but because I know what I'm doing.
Yes.
One of my weaker parts is studio lighting. I'm not as good at that I'm not as good at that as I am dealing with natural light.
Yeah.
But that's just, it's not really because I don't like shooting in studio. It's just because I feel a little bit out of my depth.
Yeah.
But I have like a few projects coming up where it's studio stuff and I'm forcing myself to get a bit more creative.
So that will lead to my question. So how do you overcome that then? And I'm guessing by doing these projects, you are going to be putting yourself in that position to actually get to know it a little bit better. And then obviously you'll be a lot more comfortable with it and
that's
a lot more. It's always the way, like you said, we're not like, I think as photographers, as creatives, we're not all perfect. We're learning. And I heard a quote once where it said, you're only as good as the last job you do. And if you don't learn from that job, then you're going into the next job without any, sort of extra knowledge. So yeah, good that you're doing that, and good that they identified it, because a lot of people do not. Kind of like know when I was like, okay, I'm not good at this. I should technically do something about it.
Yeah, like with studio light, I can shoot your like simple e-com. I can shoot really simple lighting, but when it comes to like creative lighting,
But that's the beauty of it, though. Like with photography, it's all up to your taste and vibe. And if that's what you enjoy the most, and then like you said, in your spare time, you then take the time to actually learn and improve on the stuff that you want to learn and improve on. Because if you've got the other stuff down, that's when. So I kind of like learn one thing at a time. And then once I've got good at it, I then start going into something else. I start experimenting with different things. Because I've been doing that lately myself, where I'm experimenting with a little bit more on set. Like having stylists in. So I now work with a stylist majority of my shoots myself. And I have makeup artists in. Like I technically now cannot work without a makeup artist.
Yeah.
Like I've gotten so comfortable with it because it makes the editing process for me so much easier.
Having a team is so, I don't mind. I like shooting on my own. I like it when it's that relaxed setting. But having a team does make it so much easier. Having like a stylist to notice those little bits that just aren't like perfect.
Out of place and stuff. Because you're always so focused on creating the best job possible, and getting the model in the right position, posing, etc.
Lighting,
there's just so many things that goes on in our heads that we tend to forget. So I also been experimenting with teaching myself. So I've been learning. So that's why I asked about teaching and how you found it. And I've been experimenting with myself, and I find that people ask questions that I'm kind of like still trying to figure out myself too.
Yeah.
Like, have you had that? Like, have you find that happen to yourself before, where someone asks you something, you're like, I'm not quite sure, but I think.
Yeah. I think not on Skillshare. Like, Skillshare for me is a place where I teach the things that I know.
Yeah,
like
structured based on.
Absolutely. YouTube, however, is as much me learning as it is me teaching. I'm very transparent with the fact that most of the time I don't know what I'm doing and I'm just working it out.
It's coming from your point.
Absolutely.
Based on your experiences as well.
Especially with film photography. Like, my entire journey of film photography is documented on my channel.
Yes.
So all the mistakes I've made that I'm talking about, my first roll of medium format that went terrible, that's on the channel. Because, you know, I kind of feel like it's kind of good to show your mistakes and people can learn from you making mistakes.
Yes.
So that they don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my style on my YouTube, is very much like, this is what I've done and this is what I've done wrong. So
you shouldn't go do it.
Exactly that.
Well, it's good that you put that out there, because we can also sometimes assume that everything's, you know, all good and rosy for some people because of the content that they put out. You think that, you know, it's all, you know, they're amazing, they don't make mistakes. They, like, we all do. They just cut it out. Just know how to cut it out, and they don't share it.
And also, like, some mistakes work out well. Like, we were talking about the Georgia Stanway shoot. The main image that they ended up using for that editorial was an accident. So
that's an happy accident to have, isn't it?
So I was shooting medium format film, and I was shooting it with a strobe, and the strobe didn't fire, and the room was like really dark, so it didn't like really pick anything up. So I had to like retake the photo and make it like a double exposure.
Okay.
So that it layered over just to test the strobe. So the image is a double exposure. It's the one where the strobe didn't fire, and then the one where it did over the top.
Yeah.
And that's like the main image that they used for that shoot. But it was not in, like, I didn't.
But like the fact that you were able to problem solve that on the fly, that is a skill in itself. Because if you didn't know that you could have done that, you probably would have just
I think a lot of photography I think is problem solving though, and trying to work out how you can take a problem and work, and like you said earlier about not making other people know that you've done something wrong. And being like, oh, yeah, I was meant to do that. That's why I sent it to them. I wasn't going to be like
but that's good. Like it just makes you feel, you know, you're human. Like at the end of the day, you're like, I'm sure professional photographers do it, make mistakes all the time, and you know, some of those mistakes, and like I said, that's one of those mistakes which now you could be proud of, because you know, the images but they were blown up as well one day at some places they were as well. And they were in a fair few publications. So in terms of like things you spoke briefly about it before, like what have you got planned for the future, projects, etc., that we can let the people know about? Anything you can share with us that we can then, you know, let the people know so they can keep an eye out and follow?
Yeah, I think there's not really much commercial stuff that I can
speak about. There's obviously, we understand that, we appreciate that. So
but in terms of like my personal stuff, definitely looking to experiment more with creative lighting, so and film photography in the studio. That's something I haven't done a lot of, so hopefully in the next few months you'll see that from me, like kind of experimenting. I'm also going to be shadowing some other photographers who I really love the work of, and seeing how they work, and hopefully learning a little bit from them.
And that's good that you're taking the time to do that. Like we spoke about, is just like, as photographers, we almost sometimes tend to keep ourselves in, like what's it, introvert they call it.
Yeah.
So you tend to not want other people to know that you've got weaknesses sometimes, because you feel like they're gonna use it against you. So it's good to identify those weaknesses and then start building it, because I know I've got weaknesses that I need to improve on. And like we spoke about earlier, like I'm doing my best to improve on those by being a better person in front of camera, being a better quote unquote teacher in front of camera, like explaining stuff, learning how to explain stuff, etc. So it's good to see that. So we will be keeping an eye on that, and we will be sharing that with Sophia, and hopefully she can come back on another day and also share some of those journeys, some of those images that she create with those photographers with us as well. But to sort of wrap it up, as Damar would always say, to sort of wrap up this final thoughts in terms of the photography industry right now, the state of the photography industry.
These are final thoughts. This is wrapping it up.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on what's happening right now in terms of, we spoke about this recently on a previous podcast with photography and social media, etc. And where do you see yourself and photography in the next 5 years? Do you have like a 5-year plan? I'll say go with, so let's start with social media side of things. Where do you see photography in terms of the social media side? And then what's your 5-year plan?
I think it's very interesting how social media is affecting the industry as a whole at the moment. Obviously, we know that moving image is becoming more of a thing. But, you know, trends, they come and they go and they evolve.
Yeah.
And that's happened since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
But I think if you're a photographer and you're worried about the way that social media is going, you've got to remember that there's certain things that haven't changed.
Yeah.
Like, you still need photos for advertising. So whether that is on a billboard or in a book or on a website, that's not changed. That's still going to be there. So I don't think it's going to have a massive effect on photography. I don't think it's going to. I think we're just going to have to maybe revert to like more traditional ways of shooting. And
I don't know what you mean by, I think we're just...
Don't you just love it when Siri gets involved?
I know.
Siri needs to chill out.
I know.
But yeah, carry on.
Yeah. I can't even remember what I was saying now.
We're talking about social media and the impact of it, and obviously on photographers. In terms of video side of stuff, like, do you find yourself making more videos?
Yeah, I think you have to kind of... I think from a marketing point of view, you have to evolve. I think I probably do make more videos, but I was in a situation where I was making content videos anyway, so it's not really changed that much. It just means I'm filming them vertically instead of horizontally
and
now.
Shorter format.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think that's a bad thing, you know, like evolving your skill set. And you know, there's a lot of photographers that don't rely on social media at all. And you know, you don't have to. It might be a bit more difficult, but you don't have to do it.
But the new age, the new generation, you kind of do. In a way, you still have to, because just to get your name out first of all.
I think it makes it easier. I think there's ways around it. I think I'm a huge advocate for social media. I think it's done great things to make careers accessible for people. I don't think I would be a photographer without social media.
So you think there's more positive than more negative than...
I think so.
In the industry.
Yeah. I think, it's changing at the moment, and it's hard on, you know, I see a lot of hate on Instagram about the way it's going, and I understand those frustrations, but, you know, it's a tool and you just have to kind of adapt to that tool. That
is a fantastic way of looking at it, because if you don't adapt, you get left behind. That's one of my favorite quotes. Like, you have to learn to adapt. Like anything in life, not everything's going to be exactly how you want it.
Yeah.
You know, and some people may not like what you do as well. So you either adapt to change, or
and just have fun with it as well.
Enjoy it. Like that's the main thing. Like you always say to people, like don't take it too serious. Enjoy it. Enjoy the process.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the most enjoyable sometimes, but enjoy it as much as you can, because you never know where it could lead you. And have fun.
Yeah.
Just have fun. So in terms of your plan for the next couple of years, where do you see yourself? Like, obviously, you are now full-time, I would assume.
Yeah.
You're full-time. How long have you been full-time?
I actually left my like proper job when I moved to Manchester, so I was like 17.
So you went full-time straight away?
But I was at uni, so it was a bit of a cheat. Do you know what I mean? I was at uni for 3 years. So yeah, I guess I probably went full-time in 2020, which was a bad time to go full-time, but...
Because you also, on some of Sophia's courses, you also talk about all the little things that you had to do as a full-time photographer, don't you? So you explained some of those stuff and go into a little bit more detail. So make sure you guys check that out, because there's a lot of nuggets, like the business side of photography, that people do not remember actually happens. Because as photographers and people who are on video, we're not just photographers and videographers. We're also
doing all of the backstage
the marketing
stuff, the behind the scenes.
You know, we're the social media market manager. We've got to create content for ourselves as well as our clients. We've got to stay on top of emails.
Finance.
You know, there's so many little nuggets that happen behind the scenes that people do not see. They only see the beautiful images at the end of the day, but the hard work that goes into it. So I know I've said we're going to wrap this up, but there's one area I'm not actually spoke to you about, like your editing process. How long would you say it take you now that you've got like a really nice groove to actually edit an image, say from an event, and an image from a portrait shoot?
One image?
Just one image or a set of images?
I think it depends.
Like a designated workflow for each?
Yeah, so I have, like, I'm sure you have as well, you develop your presets over time. So with portraits, I kind of just stick with the same presets that I use all the time. With live music, I use presets depending on the lighting. So it's like blue light.
You build presets
so
based
it's
on
really
those.
Quick now. I just have to tweak. And then occasionally you get some lighting that you've never experienced before.
LEDs going everywhere. Like
yeah, but thankfully it's not like color grading isn't too long a process for me now. If I have to retouch, obviously that takes a little bit more time. But yeah, I think I probably don't spend more than like a couple minutes on each photo of like just quickly
because people I just like sometimes spend a lot longer because I become a little bit of a perfectionist because I do a lot of skin retouching, a lot of close-up stuff, so I spend a little bit longer, so I know. And I, like you said, we've got workflows, so there's a specific workflow, so probably about 5 to 10 minutes on an image.
And like film has shortened my process so much because you don't need to do anything, and you might have to tweak a little bit.
How does that work in terms of like, so you shoot the film, you then send it off, it gets developed, and come back, and then I think you scanned it, right?
Yeah, so I have a scanner, so I can scan it myself, but usually I just get the lab to do it if I'm...
Yeah, is it quicker?
It's quicker. It's obviously you have to pay them to do it, but unless I really want to, for some reason, scan it myself.
So that was one of those investments that you had to make as well, like to help balance out the actual cost of actually doing photography. Photography is not a cheap thing.
No, it's not.
As photographers, because we've got all the other overheads that you know, again, people don't actually mention. But yeah, what advice would you give to a younger Sophia now, or a younger photographer looking out that's now coming into the industry? What would be the biggest advice you would give them now, or you know, a couple of insightful things that you would say to them now?
I think I'm a firm believer in like practice, like just keep practicing and learning and growing, and also, you know, the people side of photography is really important. A lot of being a portrait photographer it's a very human centric job, so be nice. Being able
to prove. And we spoke about, again, we keep talking about this, we tell people like being a better people person will make you a better photographer. Sorry to interrupt.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so those were your two main things. But yeah, it's been Compton and it's been Sophia. That was a really, really good chat. Glad that you came through, and we look forward to seeing more and more amazing work from yourself and keeping in touch as well, and look forward to some of the projects that you got coming up. But yeah, I've been Compton.
I've been Sophia.
Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.